I made a joke the other day that a Digimon series is only as good as it is kind to Joe.
Pew pew! Pew pew! Run, 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 run. Welcome to Pottages, your critically nostalgic analytical tour through Digimon anime. I'm your host, Jeff Ruberg. This week we're discussing Digimon Adventure 2020, episode 29, Escape the Burning Jungle. And for my guest this week, I'm excited to welcome back music composer, vocaloid artist, linguist, translator, it's Aster. How's it going?
Hi, thank you for having me back.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you back. And it's been about a month since you were last on for episode 25. So I'm curious, how have you been feeling about Digimon Adventure 2020 since then?
Getting the band back together, if only for a brief moment, was definitely quite a bit of a boost because I definitely enjoy any opportunity to see the characters playing off each other rather than just like fighting. But then they split again really quickly, so that was kind of like, oh, let's see how that goes. But it kind of made me think about how like the other groups in the other series were generally like differing levels of tight with each other as like friends, or whether they were friends or whether they were just working together because they kind of had to. So it kind of made me think of, like, put a little more thought into like you have like Atmon and 02 on like one side and then like Hunters where they were explicitly in competition on the other. So kind of like thinking about where they fall on the scale. They're kind of like they like each other, but I don't really get the feeling they're friends per se yet. So I'm kind of interested in seeing how that might play out.
Yeah, it's kind of like for like the brief glimpses they have together, they're friends, but like we don't really see much of that happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's weird in that like continuity there because they're kind of like bouncing back and forth between having time together and never seeing each other.
I get the feeling they reasonably like each other at the very least, though. It's not like they like are complete strangers still.
Do you think does it feel like there's any big difference in that kind of characterization between like the way that the characters feel towards each other? Do you feel like there's any big divergences from the original so far?
Oh, for the original, it's a huge difference because the original they were stuck together whether they liked it or not. And at the beginning, there was that like period of time where they weren't even getting along with each other that much because like they didn't get in like fights or anything, but like Yamato was still kind of like one step removed from everyone, and Joe was still like, I'm the oldest, so I have to take care of everybody. So, there was like a little bit of like friction there, and then there was that time when like Daichi kind of got like taken away between after the in the middle of the series when after the first defeating Etamon, and then they kind of realized that they started liking working with each other, it kind of felt like. And so after that, I feel like they definitely got a lot closer with each other. And it was like something that I pointed out. This was more so in Zero 2, but even in our war game, there was like this time period where they're saying like it's kind of hard to get everyone together again. So they weren't necessarily like friends in like day-to-day life per se, but when you have like an experience like that together, it's kind of hard to not bond with each other. I feel like Frontier kind of also ended up in a similar status like that. So I definitely feel like they had like a sort of, well, we're definitely in this together and you're the only one who gets what this whole thing is about too. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I'm curious because like I feel like the show has been so light on characterization because it kind of assumes and expects us to transpose our memory of the old characters onto
yeah.
them, and like but like as you're describing all those things that transpired in the original series, it's like they go through an entire journey. So it's like are we transposing early Yamato onto this Yamato? Are we transposing later Yamato? Are we transposing the kids when they would have fallen apart without Tai Chi?
Yamato in this series, he started off with like everyone on surname basis, which was interesting because that wasn't in the original. But and now
Oh.
he's like starting to move on to given name basis. But other than that, not really feeling like the same kind of like progression from like very close to stranger.
Hmm. I mean, it does stuff like they're going through a not traumatic but like dramatic experience together. So like I think they're still bonding, but
Hmm.
it's not nearly as much as the kids in the original series. But yeah, do you have any other general thoughts about where the series is headed?
It's kind of hard to say like any predictions because most of it hasn't, like when they do lay down overarching plot points, they're kind of mild, and whether they touch on it or not seems to be a bit of like 50-50. but I mean, I can't really make any hardcore predictions or so, but I feel like at the very least the Holy Digimon plotline is still going as far as we're currently aware. And it definitely has to do with Hikari at this point. So that as much as I can is about as much as I can predict right now.
Mm-hmm. Are you enjoying the inclusion of Hikari? Because I think she jumped in after we last talked. So.
Yes, she did. It's interesting. Her behavior is kind of interesting because the other day I went through. If you got the Zero Two Blu-ray box special edition, there was two booklets in there that had colored concept art for both Adventure and Zero Two, even though it's a Zero Two box. For the original Adventure, if you go into Hikari's section, there's a little liner note in the corner that says, in episode 21, she was sick, so she wasn't very energetic, but normally she's actually a very bright girl. Not as much as her
Mm.
brother, but normally she's actually perky. And it's kind of interesting how they seem to be going with her being so stoic and almost kind of expressionless, because that was more so a thing that came out of her being sick in the original series
Mm-hmm.
and wasn't really the case for her normally. I guess like first impressions are really strong and all that, but
Yeah, well, it was an interesting like way to by giving us that experience of her as our first impression. I think
mhm,
it's an interesting like we didn't really know if that was her normal state or her
right,
just an exception. But yeah, it's kind of weird to reduce that now to just like that's all she is. That's what she is all the time.
yeah.
But I mean, it's still interesting, I
Oh, it
guess.
is. I think the more they reinterpret into something different than necessarily just cloning the original, the more interesting it has the potential to be. But I put emphasis on that word potential.
Yeah. Yeah, like that particular that particular story of them reinterpreting the her one-off day of sickness is not it's something that like it makes me start to worry, but I'm
Yeah.
not like, oh, this is a huge misinterpretation of the character, but I'm a little bit like wondering if they got the spirit of what was going on in the original.
I don't think necessarily they're misinterpreting it, because actually there was like the one fan artist who said, I'm translating this from really literal Japanese, but they said when they were criticizing the show, they said, I think the problem is less misinterpretation and more lack of description.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if it's necessarily misinterpreting it as much as it's kind of like Flanderizing it almost. Kind of like picking one really famous trait and just sticking with that and not really elaborating.
Mm. Is that is that term Flanders like Flanders from The Simpsons or
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah. It's
okay?
they use it on TV tropes that way. So
I see, I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That is kind of the feeling I've gotten from her, but hopefully we'll see more character to her as
yeah,
we I think I actually heard this thought on Lost in Translation Mon that I think they were talking about how Patamon once Patamon got introduced, Takaru started showing a lot more character, especially having someone to bounce off of and talk to and
yeah.
stuff. So like once Tailmon shows up, maybe there's a lot more room for this to just be one small component of Hikari's character.
Which I think is like the case for adventure in general. Like when you had like a character like Yamato who's really shy and won't talk to anybody else, but the partner is there. That was kind of like the place where they would sort of kind of elaborate on stuff that they wouldn't really show anyone else. Which
Mm-hmm.
is like it's kind of like the replacement for the internal monologue.
Yeah, yeah. And it reminds me of because it's airing right now, His Dark Materials season 2,
Ah, the
which
demons, yes.
yeah, I mean I'm sure they get compared to Digimon almost constantly. But
Well, I mean, even the director has compared it, so it's
oh
fine.
really? Okay.
Yeah, he actually he said he didn't read the book until after Adventure because it didn't get published in Japan until after Adventure had aired.
Oh.
But he said he was very surprised at how similar a lot of the concepts were.
Oh yeah, I mean I haven't read the books. I've only watched the new TV series, but I enjoy how they give. I think there's more range to how the characters in His Dark Materials talk to their demons compared to how kids in Digimon talk to their Digimon. Like we don't really. I guess we have Ken and Wormmon having a kind of abusive relationship, or Ken having an abusive relationship towards Wormmon.
Yeah, I mean the demons were kind of like established from like yeah, no, it's literally your soul. That's
Yeah,
kind of established in the beginning. So I think like the level of trust is much closer from the get go, where you raise from birth and all that. You know, even in Adventure, they are technically a separate entity, so you do kind of have to have that little sense of distance there.
that's true. Yeah, it's more like a vague metaphor, kind of, for their
Yeah.
souls, a little bit, but yeah, His Dark Materials is like no, literally. So I think that's a good point to dive into this week's episode, episode 29, Escape the Burning Jungle, aka The Trees Have
The
Eyes,
trees.
aka only Garudamon can prevent forest fires. And spoiler policy for this episode, like always, we'll be talking about everything in the Crunchyroll episode, which includes the title and preview for next week's episode. And everything that was in Original Adventure is fair game, but we will not talk about anything past next week, so no titles or text synopses that have been released online. And if we talk about big spoilers for any other seasons of Digimon, we will warn you in advance. So, okay, so quick recap for this episode. Taichi remembers he has a little sister to save, but forgets that he has a Digimon that can fly until he trips and starts talking to trees instead. Koshiro informs everyone that a thing that may or may not be bad may or may not happen. Taichi struggles to defend the forest until, in a shocking plot twist, Sora actually gets a dramatic moment.
Congratulations, Sora, for being the hero of the day.
Omedetou, Sora. I am surprised how much that moment actually worked. Like I tried to go back later and like get gifs for it, and I was like, okay, there's still very little animation, but it actually felt like, wow, Sora did something really cool. I'm
That
excited.
was really dramatic. That really was
Yeah.
dramatic.
Although not to be like a bummer about it, but like it got me thinking. I guess I was confused about the marketing for this episode because I had seen the talk about there being a new insert song and I'd seen the images of War Greymon, and
Yeah,
I thought it was this episode.
but it was next episode.
So was that clear from the tweets and stuff? And I was just
I don't think
confused.
it was clear, but I don't actually remember the specific wording of it. I just know that they do kind of have to announce like inserts a little early
Mm-hmm.
because like music licensing be weird.
Mm.
But
So yeah, I'm not sure if those announcements were vague and I was misled like you're supposed to be, or if I was just confused. But
I,
yeah,
I think you are right. They didn't really give like solid like numbers, like this is going to happen in this episode.
mm,
So we just kind of assumed.
okay, because yeah, when Taichi was like pushing himself really hard and like taking a stand, like standing in front of Metal Greymon, thinking about Hikari, I was like, okay, this is the moment that he's gonna unlock War Greymon for real this time. This is gonna be the moment. And then Sora appears, and I was like, okay, I want to be excited for Sora in this moment, but like, it just got me thinking about how like. In its very concept, the way Digimon handles evolution like that, it's always a Deus Ex Machina, right? It's always like either the character can push themselves hard enough and then the writers decide, okay, now they unlock it,
Well,
or
it depends because like question of like pushing self really hard in Adventure that was the crests. So like that had like a very specific trigger.
yeah.
And then like in when it came to Wargame and Metal Corona, we had that whole like arrow thing and deliberately
Right,
taking
right.
a risk and the extremely passionate hold me tight so I don't run away happening there.
Yeah, for them it was definitely like so mechanically based that you can't replace that with like a big dramatic moment. But yeah, I don't know, like I guess the things that are about like character the evolutions that are about like character catharsis.
Yeah.
But I don't know, this is the only series that made me think about it so much. Like I feel like the other series in that had moments where it's like you think it's gonna happen and then something else like turns and it doesn't happen.
I remember everyone was talking about that one shot from the preview where you had Alamon biting onto Metal Greymon's metal arm, which is somehow
Oh.
causing Metal Greymon pain, even though
Yeah.
it's biting onto metal. And so someone said, like, is this gonna be the reason he evolves?
Well, I think people were also showing the like one of the screenshots they showed of the War Greymon evolution sequence has him without shoulder pads.
Yeah.
So which is it's just a weird thing to see, but yeah, I don't maybe his metal is just like he's just a very sensitive boy. So
Does the metal have nerves in it? Doesn't that defeat the point of it being like armor?
so like every time Taichi's standing on his head walking around, he can feel it. And
Oh no.
well, another thought that I only realized this episode, but it's kind of mostly about last episode. But like Angemon, right? Like stopped. Was he Skull Knightmon or Dark Knightmon at that one? He was Dark Knightmon. He stopped Dark Knightmon's attack and scattered everyone to the winds to like keep them away from Dark Knightmon. But that just made it even easier for Skull Knightmon to kidnap Hikari.
Yeah.
They were separated, and he still like by the end of the episode, Skull Knightmon still got what he was looking for.
Well, I guess like it's not really certain. They don't necessarily know what exactly he's looking for. So I guess it was probably just like a desperate last ditch attempt to make sure everybody doesn't get taken down in one hit.
Yeah, yeah.
The alternative is not necessarily worse.
Right, right. Yeah, they didn't actually know what he was looking for and stuff. So like in the like I can understand the character motivation there.
Yeah.
Although I don't like why did Angemon think that Dark Knightman was such a big threat? I mean, I don't know. Not to gripe too much about that last episode. What did you think about Taichi like when he trips and then like gets motivation again from Agumon and then starts instead of like just running after Hikari without saying anything, he like talks to everyone through the walkie-talkie digivices and like tells them what's going on and tells them what his
So
quote unquote plan is.
interesting because in the original series and in most Digimon series, they don't have the ability to do that. I think it wasn't until Frontier that that was actually like an ability with the like to be able to like talk to people over long distances. It was an interesting use of that because it was kind of like a little bit of technical coordination. And so I was like, I'm going to go after Hikari, but you guys take care of this. And then like obviously that fell through, so Sora came in later and like chipped in. I guess I don't know if I really have much to say about it because it's something I haven't really been used to seeing before. Taichi was like oddly leader like this episode, not just for that, but also in terms of like organizing the Woodmon.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like trying to show off that like little like penchant for like gathering everybody together.
Yeah, I was kind of like when I was watching with my boyfriend, he mentioned that like this was like a sign of character development for Taichi that he like before would have just run off and not said anything, and this time he's like telling people. But I don't know if I buy that so much because
He's kind of had it together since day one, so I'm not sure if he would have run off before, but I think it definitely is supposed to show off like leadership chops.
yeah, I think I also find it frustrating when this isn't Taichi's fault, but when they're talking about like meeting up, they're all
Yeah.
talking about like, oh, let's meet up. Yeah, let's meet up. And it's like, it's not just like you wish to meet up. You need to like discuss logistics and like where you're going to meet up. How are you going to find each other? Like,
Yeah.
I guess it's lucky that Sora found Taichi. I mean, I guess Sora can, Gridamon can fly, so it's the
Yeah.
best of you. I wonder if she, now I'm just imagining her seeing Skull Knightmon and Dark Maildermon flying off with Akari, and she's like, oh, okay, bye. Have a good day. Oh, there's Taichi. Okay, let me go up to Taichi. So I think it's a little disappointing that like they keep talking about meeting up, but they don't really talk about the how of it. But I don't know. Not the biggest gripe.
Not really, no.
Did you notice? Have you been watching with subtitles on? English subtitles?
Yes, yes. Generally, I do. When subtitles are available, I will watch with subtitles on.
Hmm. So I was curious what you thought about the moment when the Woodmon describe themselves as this, the way the Crunchyroll subtitles translate is, "We are those who wish to live in peace." And I was like, is this like a just a very stiff translation, or is this like a direct homage to like? Because this wasn't homeostasis originally referred to as like,
No, that's one who wishes for stability.
right, right.
The reason why homeostasis was named that was actually because like stability was like an actual recurring theme in Adventure in Zero Two. So
Mm,
like it was talking about like distortion versus stability was like a huge thing. Apparently, there's like a Gnosticism relation in there, but I think it's just because of like the whole like the way it was phrased, it was a little overly literal.
hmm.
In general, I do think there's like a little bit of like if I'm gonna be super, super, super nitpicky, like yeah, the translation does tend to like err on stiff a little bit, but like again, this is a simulcast, so they probably have to translate this really quickly.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
also, it's probably one of the best official Digimon translations so far, because if you have seen that very brief period of time, Adventure through Tamers was officially licensed. Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember like the full list of like they had the character names were wrong, weren't they?
It was like, even like the English was like barely comprehensible because it was like bootleg level. Like, I don't even know if the translator spoke English, kind of like
Oh,
translation level. And Sigurd Fried. I'm never letting that one down.
what is that? What was it?
Sigurd Fried.
Instead of what?
Well, it's because it's supposed to be in relevance to in Tamers when Grani was named because it's
Oh.
the name after the legendary horse. But I guess they couldn't decide whether the name was Sigurd or Siegfried because his name is spelled Sigurd Fried.
Oh,
So I mean, I can't really complain too much because we've come a very long way since then.
I mean, you just combine the best of both names, and then I was intrigued by all of Koshiro's talk about satellites this episode.
May or may not have.
Yeah, as much as I like made fun of that in the recap, but like because I think it is that's good tension building to be like, so here's this thing, here's this problem, but it's not actually a problem. Like there's not actually devastating consequences.
Yet.
That's troubling. It seems like there should be devastating consequences.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, I already joked about this on Twitter, but like if all I mean, so he does say that I was confused at first, but he says that it's not just that if satellites fall, they wouldn't cause physical damage, but he also
Mhm.
says that satellites aren't going to fall. Like this bug is not going to cause the satellites to fall because I think if they did fall, that would even if they don't cause physical damage, that would ruin all GPS systems.
Right.
But so he says that it's not they're not going to fall, but they seem like they're going off course. So I'm like that could still ruin GPS systems, couldn't it? Like
One thing that was pointed out when they started doing like the initial like promotional descriptions for this series before episode one ever even aired, was that they were talking about like the differences between technology in 1999 versus technology now, with Adventure
mhm.
being Adventure being made in like that era where like technology was still slowly rolling out to consumers and everyone was still like, oh, what is this? And the mystique was huge, you know. Um, and one thing I was wondering is if they were going to take the Atmon route where they talk about like daily, how it influences daily life and how people are impacted. Because one of the themes of like Atmon was like everyone is so dependent on technology that like when bad things happen to like the internal server or something, that screws everyone over. Um, this series' approach seems to be more of the Our War Game approach, which is like some if you damage the network that causes some really massive like potential cataclysmic disaster that may or may not influence foreign policy or governments or global policy or whatever. Um, it's interesting because it's definitely more of a cataclysmic issue that they need to prevent, but also it's a little disconnected from the average person.
Yeah, yeah, it wouldn't be like individual people would not notice the consequences until like
Yeah,
I don't know, like all shipping routes are ruined or
right.
like
And like even in our
hmm.
war game, there was that moment where like the microwave gets fried because of the whole incident, and Yuko's like, "It's computer controlled. I don't know why. Why this one of the plague." But in this case it's mostly been like, yeah, like those kind of like wide in the background kind of stuff. The one time they did bring it into like the consumer view was when they had the initial fight in Tokyo with like the cell phones and everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of on its own level. It's kind of interesting to see like these things that are like worldwide disasters that are kind of removed from people.
Yeah,
Because I guess for a while we kept getting those like flash. Like for a while it was like all we're getting was flashes to Tokyo and being like, oh no, there's no power. Like we saw lots of
yeah.
individuals affected during that. So now seeing this like broader scope, but also more removed, but bigger
Is
disaster.
the time dilation thing still in play actually?
I assumed so, but they definitely are not bringing it up anymore. Yeah. Maybe that was just a cloud continent thing? I don't
When
know.
they went back to the real world, it was understandable that like they had to take care of the crisis now because it's happening now. But they're back in the digital world now, so how much time do they have?
One thing I hadn't thought about is like, so if that time dilation was happening throughout them being separated, that would mean that like,
Yeah, wasn't there something about like the Digivice momentarily synchronizing? Oh no, my head hurt.
no,
It's like,
yeah, the Digivices definitely were supposed to do that, but like, if the kids, so I guess that would mean that the kids, the four that were stuck in that park on the roof of the building,
yeah,
they were, if time dilation is still in effect, they were only there for a brief amount of time, but
yeah.
to us it seemed like episodes and episodes. That would make
Uh,
sense, I guess.
just Jeremy Bearimy and don't think too hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just hope that the resolution of the satellite thing is not something so obvious that it makes Koshiro in this episode seem silly for not realizing it. Because it's like
Yeah.
just an episode or two ago, he was like the smartest person on the entire planet. So
Well, it's probably going to be like, you defeat a Digimon and like it cleans it up retroactively. So,
yeah, yeah. I thought this is a completely random note, but the moment when Metal Greymon throws Megadramon so hard that it like knocks into a bunch of Alamon and kills the Alamon. It's like this makes no sense, but it's fun. It was a great moment. What was your general like vibe or like reaction to this episode?
I thought it was there. Even though everyone's separated again, I do think there was like a better job, like giving everybody a little bit of a character moment. Whereas even compared to like the time when they were doing like two groups, kind of interesting seeing what everyone is doing on their own, roughly speaking. I'm a little amazed at how well Yamato is taking being separated from Takeru after he was like flipping a lid for the first quarter of the series over, not
Yeah,
knowing how he
yeah.
was doing. Now he's just like, well, he got really strong now, so I guess it's okay. Even though like he's not even like with his mom anymore.
And also Padamon's not combat ready, so he is alone. And he's just lucky that he's the one kid that doesn't have a dangerous Digimon attacking them.
I do appreciate though, like when like he heard that like Taichi's sister got kidnapped, he's like, yeah, take care of your siblings.
Yeah. I'm a little bit disappointed from like last episode. I really got the vibe that we were going to. I guess I just assumed it gave me the expectation that we were going to have like a adventure style reuniting arc, like going around and reuniting each
Oh
one
yeah,
person
yeah,
one by
yeah. I
one.
remember that. Yeah.
But from this episode, I kind of got the vibe and said that these kids, each of them in their own little set piece. I'm worried they're just gonna revisit them each episode as a way to like remind you that they're still there, but that we probably won't actually get an episode. Like I thought it was gonna be like each one of these set pieces was gonna be a full episode, but now
Yeah,
I'm like it's probably just a backdrop and B
yeah,
plots.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Kind of hard. Like I said, it feels really difficult to make predictions because like I don't actually notice any patterns. So
Yeah, yeah, but I'm still intrigued by like the we're getting at least somewhat different mixes of characters, like the fact that Sora is now teamed up with Taichi.
also the little that we're getting actually does kind of demonstrate quite a departure from the original series. Like for instance, the fact that like Joe is like the one who's like taking his time in the hot tub versus the original who would be like a complete ball of stress right now. Like I need to get back, we need to do things, we need to like why are we here? Why are we wasting all this time? Kind of like incredibly high strung person.
Well, I see what you mean. There's a big difference there, but like he's still kind of being a ball of stress in that like the reason he can't leave the hot spring is because he's too stressed out to leave, and then he's
Well,
stuck there.
even before being stuck there though, like he was
Yeah.
definitely enjoying it in last episode. And Mimi also taking this with an incredible lack of panic. You know, let's make jewelry now. Like this kind of reminds me of when the profiles first came out and like we were trying to read like the website profiles to see how similar
Hmm.
and how not similar they were to the original, and they used that wase ego term in Mimi's profile, which is my base,
Mm-hmm.
like meaning like not really paying, really caring what other people think and just doing whatever. And so that term kind of applies to original Mimi in the sense that she sometimes will just like go ahead and complain about whatever's happening without really caring that it's annoying other people. But in this case, it's more like really just like does not really care about the crisis at all and wants to go collect souvenirs.
Actually, that is a really interesting point and reminds me of one of our listener questions that I'm going to pull forward into the segment. So Hinata Minoru asked, "What do you think about the character portrayals? I feel a bit bugged by how Hikari was portrayed recently in the series. Also Yamato's too, but Hikari is the one bugging me the most." And the thing it remind like talking about Mimi and her like my pace attitude. Do you kind of feel like Mimi's like you were talking about flanderization of Hikari, that they've kind of taken her like simplified her character, so now that it's like things that would have been like like she would have been more attuned to the panic of the situation, and instead it's just like taking her like kind of like one joke and making it her entire
Yeah.
attitude now. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, that's kind of like how they're basically just like taking the most famous thing about them and just kind of like exaggerating that. In the case of Mimi, I'm not actually sure if that's really applicable because in the original, I think the most famous thing about her was that she complained a lot. That's what
Mm-hmm.
everyone kind of remembers her for, even though it's the circumstances where people tend to be a little harsh on her for that. But uh, I think everybody has their heads on a little too straight in general compared to what you would think the panic of the situation would be. I think somebody commented once that it was like having a group of 7 to 8 kurotaikis. um, except in Crosswords, the fact that he was like that was considered very unusual.
Mm-hmm.
um, so everyone is just kind of like taking everything as it goes, and I don't really see them having any kind of like sense of like panic or unease, especially like when you said earlier with the moment where like Agumon comes up to Taichi and he's like stand up again, and then Taichi's like okay got it, and then they just go back to business. It's kind of like everyone is kind of, yeah, I don't really sense a sense of panic in general. So in the case of Mimi, I think, obviously it's more so her than the others because of how she's being portrayed as like just marching to the beat of her own drum. But also I do think that kind of extends to everybody in general. And the person who asked the question also pointed out Yamato too. And like I said, he was like flipping his lid in the first core over Takeru, and now he's just like, well, he can take care of himself now. So
Yeah, it's like he kept telling like Tucker, "Stay here, don't move. You're in danger. You're in danger if you move from the spot." And it's like he kept ignoring that advice enough times, and now he's like, "Oh, I guess he's
he's
fine. I
okay
guess
now.
I don't know." Like, I feel like the characters whose portrayal is frustrating me the most is Joe's, because I feel like they have focused so much on his like wanting to be the leader.
Yeah, actually, the whole thing about wanting to leader, that was like only one episode, and it wasn't that he wanted to be the leader. It was that everybody nominated him as such, and he was so stressed that he just went with it.
And also it's like a natural thing, right, for his like age, like his position in age and the fact that they're in a summer camp. So like
Well, also, like the thing was that he was the oldest, but the way he took being the oldest was in the original was that means I have the most responsibility, which means that if
yeah.
somebody gets hurt under my watch, that's my fault. Um, which is why he would do like really reckless things because he's like, I have to protect everybody. But in this one, it's kind of like the opposite. He's taking like being the oldest as like a badge of honor almost.
Yeah, it's like he wants to be the one making the decisions
Yeah.
more than he wants to take responsibility, which I enjoy the jokes. I don't enjoy the joke being the character.
I guess like I made a joke the other day that a Digimon series is only as good as it is kind to Joe. so not series really, just like any kind of like individual thing. So like the degree of how mean you are to Joe, I'm like, leave him alone. He's trying his best.
Yeah, I found it funny this episode how he's just so he can't get out of the hot tub, he can't get out of the onsen, so he is now like actually in physical danger because he can't get out. I feel sad for him.
He's trying.
He is trying. Any other interesting character portrayals? Yeah, Hikari. Like we talked about before, like Hikari, I'm like not loving what we've seen so far of Hikari, but I'm also hoping that it changes.
The fact that she's totally okay with getting kidnapped. It's like she's just like, yeah, this is my life now.
So, do you like that, or do you dislike that?
I only like it if it's going to go somewhere. That's my
Hmm.
stance on it. Hikari was very difficult to read in the original series, but that was kind of partially because they established this very late in the series. But they say very clearly she's the kind of person who doesn't talk about her feelings, especially if it puts a burden on other people.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why she never talks is because she's like constantly like putting herself out for people, even if it like tires her out. So that's why like when she's sick, she won't talk about it because she doesn't want to like put a damper on Daichi having fun with soccer. Or like when they're trying to save the world, she's feeling sick, she won't say it because there's like duty involved. So there was like a very good character tracking reason why this was the case, why she was like so quiet all the time. But she was still like, when they kidnapped her, she wasn't very, or not, yeah, whenever like really scary things happen, she would obviously show emotion about that kind of thing. And even, there was that really famous scene where she like actually gave herself up to be taken away because she's like, you're hurting my friend, so if I give myself up, will you stop hurting them? She was not like emotionless. So again, I feel like this is taking a little too much of like episode 21.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like, especially in hearing you like describe how not well-rounded, but like how fully thought out her original character was, that like there were reasons for all these things and they all fit together. And I feel like the characterizations in this show have felt more like stabs on a dartboard, like
And I like that, yeah.
like because sometimes it hits the same way and it hits really well, but like it's often scattershot and it's just like a best guess approximation of how the character was before translating to a different context and it doesn't quite fit. But like
It's kind of like they're going for the traits first rather than the character as a person first. So usually like when you make a character, it's like you start with the background and then you go to like, how does a character with this background react to this situation? But then in this case it seems to be going retroactively, like they have this trait and then there's another trait and they just like add it on without like the core justification for why they act this way.
I'm always fascinated by, because yeah, like I agree, like that's how I assumed and would think is the most natural way to think about characters. But whenever I hear stories like stories I've heard about the writers of Breaking Bad have talked about how they didn't have like the main character, they had no idea planned or ever written about who his parents were.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how do you, like, obviously the parents don't come up in the context of the story, so it's kind of like, let's leave that question open until it comes up in the context of the story, and then it never did, so it wasn't really relevant. But it's like, how do you have this fully formed character that you're going to write 5 seasons about and not have like a firm idea of like what their family situation was growing up, like, and yet it still comes out well? I don't know, it surprises
me. It
me.
is possible to execute, I think, but like it takes a lot of circumstances. And I feel like in the case of Adventure in Zero Two, one of the like biggest things they really leaned on was like background, and not just family background, but just like it's kind of like motivation for like, if because they think this way or they had this experience that shapes their action in this case, kind of like logical progression.
So let's move into 3-word reviews. At Magicmon22, a baby died.
Ursam Ravlek, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Tank Dramon kills babies.
And Dot Yawning, poor victim Plantmons.
Bored individual, it's Chekhov's Lotmon.
And CC Takata needed more Lotmon.
Drew Softman, Smokymon the bear.
Leo untweeted, military deforestation complex.
Golden pelt at the image of Lot 1 of the Flames. This is fine.
That was good. Very 2020 mood. Andy mad at Wentz. Finally, inspirational Digidestined.
Dak and Jaxter dances with Greymon.
I don't get that one.
I think there's a reference here, but I don't actually remember.
Yeah.
I don't know enough pop culture to know this one.
It definitely feels like a reference, and I'm like, this is going over my head. This is the make references that go over Jeff's head and makes him seem silly and stupid segment. Gigadramon 22. Where is Gigadramon?
Pastelmon art. Someone rescue Joe.
Oh.
I agree.
And Empire Will. More Sora heroism.
Yay!
Yay! All right, so moving on to some listener questions and comments. First off, at Drew Softman, is Hikari the eighth Digestant? I need to know.
Well, according to the translation for this series, she's the eighth chosen one, unquote.
Yes, she's... Yes. Yes.
That's how they've chosen to translate it this time.
That bothered me a lot when it was first revealed in like episode 5 or so, but like I haven't really noticed it since then.
I'm just bothered that the franchise is not consistent about this ever.
Yeah.
I'm just like, pick one and stick with it, please.
Like I wouldn't mind if they were going with chosen one because the language they're using in Japanese was different, but like it's the same word in Japanese, so why not? Yeah. It just seems like even removed from like the context of, because I'm not always in favor of like, oh, fan is using this one thing, so like the official translation needs to use what the fan has been using. But like even if you remove the context of what fans have been calling it for a while, like it's Kodomotachi in Japanese. Why would you go with one?
It's just like pick one and stick with it. You know, we've had like 3 different translations on the official side now, and so it's like pick one, please.
Yeah. At Empire Will said, is retreat and regroup in anyone's vocabulary?
Ostensibly, yes, but there's no plan.
Have we seen them actually retreat? I'm trying to remember.
No, other than forcibly getting forced to retreat thanks to Anjumon's.
Yeah, like I guess Angemon effectively had them retreat, but yeah, that didn't really bother me in this episode per se, but I think last episode I was particularly like, okay, why are they fighting this Voltramon? Like he hasn't even attacked them. Like they could just leave.
They could have just left.
Yeah. Karita Prime said, in last episode you commented on how Angemon wears a white cloth covering his entire body. So I'm wondering, do you think it's also covering his wings? And if so, are the wings actually flesh color? Which is a horrifying
trying to think about like humanoid Digimon clothing physics has like been breaking my brain since 2007. I guess it would become. Thinking too hard about it is hard.
I'm looking now to see like, are his wing color? Yeah, his wings are like the exact same color as his cloth
armor thingy.
Yeah. Yeah, really what we need to see to understand how this works is like for him to remove some of that cloth armor stuff and see how it works. Oh my, I'm just looking now at Angelomon. I didn't realize that she has it like on her neck, but it like it immediately stops at her neck. Angelomon is a design. That's all I'll say.
Well, I got into the series because of that, so.
Oh, really?
Partially, yes.
At Pastelmon Art asked, do you think there is a chance this Lopmon is the Cherbimon reincarnation? And they say, I wish it was, and that he comes back evolved. He remembers Taichi, but I'm having too many expectations, maybe.
So yeah, everyone's thinking of the 3 great angels from Frontier, who also have some clout in like null canon. I'm not sure where we stand about that right now because on top of the usual Great Angels thing, Razielmon was also introduced, and she's like apparently like related to that group somehow. But the episode where we first learned about the Holy Digimon put her in a separate category, so I'm not sure how closely they're planning to adhere to that setup. I think it would be very interesting, but then it also begs the question of why 2 of them have partners and 1 doesn't.
Yeah. Well, wait. So what was that about? Razielmon being in a different category?
Because they were showing like that list of like the Holy Digimon in like the early episode
when
they were showing that, and so like Razielmon's like one of the like silhouettes there.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
I was trying because Cherubimon was as well, I believe, right?
I don't actually remember the specifics of who was in there and who wasn't. And, like, it's been a while.
I'm trying to look it up now. I forgot that in this episode, Koshiro was upside down for most of the episode because he was in Waymon's body. Yeah, I thought Cherubimon was there.
Might have been actually.
Yeah. I'm looking now at a screenshot that has him there, and they are kind of like in a row. Cherubimon, Seraphimon, Ovanimon. But
so, yeah, I guess if we're going on like a fetch quest of the Holy Digimon here, 2 of them end up partners, the others are not as lucky.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to bring up. why two of them get them and why the others don't, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have to see. I think Lotmon, yeah, I don't know. There's so little. Lotmon could go in two wildly different directions. It could be like they set him down. And he's like, okay, that's the end of the episode. That's the end of Lotmon's story, or it could end up being wildly important.
Yeah. I think, everyone who is aware of the franchise, like null canon, is like definitely like eyes emoji.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, this is a general topic. I was curious if you had any thoughts on that. I've seen people speculate that like whether this episode was filler or not comes down to like how important Lopmon's going to be.
Really, it does.
But I'm curious how you feel about like filler in general. Because to me, I'm like, if this episode feels like filler and Lopmon ends up being extremely important, I'm still going to consider it filler.
Yeah, because filler. I mean, the definition of filler is like, again. I think I said this on the last. I think I might have said this on the last episode. I forgot if the last episode I was on. I'm not sure if I actually ended up saying it or not because I remember it was in my notes. But my impression of like what filler is like when they're adapting a manga and then like the manga still needs to write some more chapters, so then they put in some like extra stuff in there to catch up, and that's just like been my definition of filler this whole time. So past that definition, it becomes a really arbitrary definition of what filler is in the first place because it just becomes what I personally think is important or not.
Right. It's like
And
very subjective.
like for me, I'm a character person, so even if nothing gets advanced in the plot at all, as long as it advances the character arcs a lot, I don't really consider it a filler episode. So by that note, like if you're talking about how much it advances the plot, that would be a really good chunk of adventure episodes. But those were really important character episodes, so you can't really say they're filler.
Yeah, and for me, it's like because there are so many different things I value. Like I've valued character moments. I'll value cool animation or like like big dramatic set pieces. So like basically, if there's anything that feels worth watching, then to me it doesn't feel like filler. I think
Right.
it's easier, like you were saying about the original like technical definition, like when things are adapted from manga. I find it sometimes easier to like stick strictly to that definition because then there's no subjectivity involved and like
Right.
I feel like there's too many fandom debates about like, oh, this is a filler episode, and it's like, just say you don't like it. Like,
Well, yeah, I guess a better way to put it would be like nothing much got accomplished this episode, whether it's in a
mhm.
character sense or in a plot sense or something. Just like nothing much was advanced.
Yeah, and like even talking about things like was plot advanced become subjective because
Right.
like probably I'm guessing the reason you had this in your notes for last episode was because like technically they did move very far. They went all
They
the way from the
did.
cloud continent to the
Yeah.
ocean and the below. But like if you depending on how much you like care about the plot details, that either is a huge difference or nothing.
Right.
So yeah, I think it but I feel like if Lotmon ends up being important, like this episode didn't really introduce his or her or their character. It just
Yeah. Just
they were
there.
just there. And so I feel like we have yet to really be introduced to Lotmon. So at Dak and Jackster said 2020 has a habit of checking in with other characters across several episodes. Sometimes this adds to tension/intrigue, but other times feels like plate spinning and can be a bit deflating. What are your thoughts on this technique and its execution overall?
So I'm just gonna give like a very shortened answer because we mostly covered this earlier. But I think it's something we're paying attention to mostly because it was the Taichi and Yamato show for so long.
Hmm.
So that like we're like eyes emoji at like anything that has the other characters in it, even if it's like a short scene.
Yeah, I don't like when it's plate spinning because they want to focus on Taichi Yamato or
Yeah.
now just Taichi. But I think, yeah, it's kind of like a typical TV structure of having like A plots, B plots, C plots, etc. Like
Yeah.
when the B plot is the same B plot across several episodes,
Yeah.
that's disappointing. And especially when it's used in a way to like focus on an A plot that people aren't as interested in,
Right.
that's disappointing. So I hope they handle that in a more interesting way going forward. So the next comment is not a question, but it's just a positive note that I want to read, and it's from at Andy underscore mad at Wentz. This episode has reignited my passion of the series. Taichi actually talked to Woodmon. The threat felt real and not contrived. Hell, Tanktrabon killed a baby. There was actual strategy to bring down the bad guy. They inspired Digimon to fight alongside them. And what's funny is all these moments add up to less than 5 minutes of screen time. I don't know if I appreciate it more because we have so little of these moments in previous episodes, or if this episode just hit the sweet spot, but I'm glad this episode came when it did.
I was mentioning in the last episode I appeared in that I felt like the first core was stronger than the second core. I do feel like this was kind of more like a first core episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like a little glimpse of like digital world society at that, getting to see like characters bounce off each other a little more. It was that kind of aura.
Yeah, yeah, it did. I forgot about by the second core. I was kind of forgot about digital world society being a thing, or
Yeah,
like,
it was a thing. I do feel like though they are a little inconsistent on whether they want to go with like the structured society angle, which is like Adventure, Zero Two, Frontier, Cross Wars, or whether they're trying to go like the Tamers edge of like, everything is like survival of the fittest. They're kind of like half and halving it. So I think like a lot of people point out like the Digimon don't talk a lot, and that's like one of the things that's kind of feeding into it is like we're not sure how sentient society as a whole is right now.
yeah, I think they're leaning pretty hard into the like Tamers-esque evolution-seeking
Yeah.
Digimon eat Digimon world of this new arc.
Yeah.
Which at least they're being consistent about that because I feel like
Yeah.
before it was I didn't enjoy how it was like
There.
yeah, mixed bag. Okay, so next question from Megajimon22. Aside from Tri and the faux Digimon Emperor, is this the youngest Digimon we've ever seen die in the franchise? Hopefully, this is the start of the companion arc I wanted to last week with Taya Agumon and Lopmon going forward.
I actually don't know what you're referring to in regards to try.
Yeah, I'm not sure the
I
Digimon
don't actually
Emperor.
remember because like they kill Meikumon, but like she's like Ordinamon at the time, which is like not really different from other like major kills in this franchise. And then like there's Wormmon in Zero Two who dies strictly in child form. So I don't think this is the youngest by far.
Yeah, I couldn't think of any other baby Digimon getting attacked. Like even when like Primary Village or sorry, what's the name of that?
Village of Beginnings. Yes.
Village Beginnings. Yeah, when
Well,
that
Primary Village is actually technically not a bad translation of it.
yeah,
Think about
yeah.
it literally.
But usually when Primary Village gets attacked, it's like we don't see the devastation on screen, I feel.
No.
So I guess this was like technically a little bit more gruesome than we normally see, but like
I
yeah.
guess the fact that the village was attacked is what's being referred to in Try. Actually, now that I think about it, I didn't remember that a second ago, but I think that's what's being.
Oh,
But we didn't.
oh
But we
yeah.
saw like a bunch of eggs being destroyed, but we didn't actually see the Digimon themselves being destroyed. So I think that's the thing. But like, yeah, in this case, I don't think this is by far the youngest at all.
At Digimon22 said, when it comes to Digimon, I always like a good pairing. Angemon and Angelomon, or a good rivalry, Leomon and Ogremon. I always thought Megajimon and Gigajimon would work together. Where's the blue boy?
I'm surprised they didn't bring him in, considering that this series has been really big on bringing in like Digimon null lore into the kit.
and also that episode with the Siegramon, like they had Mega Siegramon, Water Siegramon. So
Yeah,
like it,
maybe
it
they had a
seems
dramatic breakup a couple weeks ago. They're still trying to admit that they're doing, they're not doing that well on their own. The dramatic developments are further to come.
I feel like it's like when Megajimon first appeared and it was like a single Megajimon. I was like, okay, poor Gigajimon, but okay, it's just a single Megajimon. Now it's like Megajimon keeps showing up with like swarms of them, and like Gigajimon's nowhere to be seen. But then they also Gigajimon22 also asked, "What pair would you like to see in the series next?" And they mentioned Gigimon and Gigiwomon, which is
Babamon.
how they're referring to Babamon. But I think it's a fun
Yeah.
name for Babamon.
That's a good question, actually.
My first thought was Beelzebumon and Minervamon, but
Oh yeah, actually, if you want to go into like further null lore, there's actually Beelzebumon and Bellstarmon.
oh yeah.
So Bellstarmon hasn't gotten any anime coverage at all, actually. So that would be kind of interesting, I think.
That's it's too good to be animated.
There's also,
uh,
I don't know if this is a pair, but I'm still dying for like the Bancho series to make like
yeah.
a full scale appearance. Bancho Lilymon's going to be in the card game soon, which is very exciting. But
Like no, no. The card game. Whoever is like designing which characters show up in the card game, I think is like I don't know. Like they know exactly what the fans want, and they're going right for it. So I wish whoever is making those decisions was more in charge of the anime series, but
really,
but the cards are really fun. So
oh god, I love the cards.
Um, I would like to see like because I've been playing a lot of Hades recently. I want
Ooh.
like any characters that have a Achilles and Patroclus vibe.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
I guess like no, I was gonna say Leomon and Ogremon, but not really. Like I want like two bros who like
Yeah.
totally are lovers, but they don't need to explicitly admit it. But like
Yeah, that would be really cool. Actually, have we? I think there was that story with like Balmon back in Crosswords, although that was more of a backstory thing.
Oh, I don't remember that. I need to
Yeah,
rewatch
well,
Crosswords.
I can't spoil other series in this podcast, so I won't give the full details. But yeah, there was Balmon's backstory. That's probably like really the closest thing we've got as far as I can think of right now.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, my main memory of Balmon from Crosswords was like hoping for him to evolve, and then like I forgot his actual backstory before evolving. So now I'm excited to rewatch Crosswords. Someone pointed out that like in almost every episode I mention how I need to rewatch Crosswords. So
I haven't. I actually, I think it's the only one I have not rewatched once since the first time I watched it. So
oh really?
yeah, I think I probably am due for a rewatch of this at some point.
I think that's true for me. I guess not Abon. I haven't rewatched Abon yet.
Atmon was a special case, so usually I don't rewatch series so soon after they air. But
Mhm.
we had a watch party with some friends the other day, so I was obligated. I mean, the other month, so I was obligated to rewatch. But
Did you get through the whole thing?
yeah,
Oh wow.
Adventure 02 Atmon, not all.
Oh wow. Oh okay. Not just one season, but
Yeah,
several seasons. Oh wow. Before we close out the episode, do you have any other final thoughts, or should we go into our ratings?
yeah. Let's go right. Let's go straight in.
All right. So how would you rate this episode out of five little baby Digimon fighting back against a giant tank and maybe getting murdered? But
Oh no. I'll give it a straight 2.5 maybe. I'm not really sure. Giving like hard grounds as to why would be hard because like I think there were like the cute moments with like checking on the other kids and Sora like being generally pretty awesome are are definitely in its favor, but then not in its favor would be just like the fact that as we discussed with the definition of filler earlier, I don't feel like much was advanced in any kind of case characterization or plot wise. So it's kind of like it's an interesting episode and like we also discussed, it heavily depends on what comes later, whether they do anything with what was established in this episode or whether it's just there because it's there. So it feels a little
hmm,
tricky to think about it in a vacuum right now,
yeah, I guess that's our task though. We have to judge it in the vacuum. But
unfortunately. Yes.
uh, I I think I end up at the same point as you. I can also give it 2.5.
Yeah.
I think I kind of like trending down. Like it would have been like a 2 if not for the Sora dramatic moment.
Pretty much.
And which I don't know. I guess I'm still kind of riding a high a little bit from last episode, where like I'm still excited to. I'm not like 2.5. I'm exhausted by the series and like frustrated and stuff. Like I'm just kind of like, okay, well this episode didn't really show me much that was that interesting. It's a little bit below average, but like
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's what I'm saying. It's just like it had some, it didn't have some, so yeah, kind of in the
yeah,
middle.
yeah. I have not thought about my answer for this. So who would your MVP be?
Sora.
Okay, I guess that's a good obvious answer.
Also salvaging Jeff's rating of the episode.
Yeah. um, I thought it was interesting. I've actually already posted this on Twitter, but I looking at the average ratings from the Twitter polls I've been posting, that like this episode, like is pretty much in line with the last couple of weeks episodes. Like it's around that same point.
Hmm.
But then I started charting because the thing I noticed at first was that like the percentage of 2-star or lower votes was
Hmm.
very high, but
Hmm.
somehow the average was still roughly the same. And
Right.
looking at the percentage of those 2-star or lower votes, like it's like stays relatively stable until there's like a dramatic episode that people are frustrated by, like the Omegamon.
So like it becomes really polarizing for that reason. I can see.
Yeah, and this one I guess was kind of polarizing because it got a bunch of 2-star and 5-star votes.
Yeah, it's kind of like there was some interesting ways of playing the dramatic stuff, like the kill the baby. so so it depends on how well you took that, I guess.
Is it bad that I wasn't that affected by killing the baby?
Well, I mean, I think they needed to characterize the baby a little more first before we can, talk about killing the baby.
Okay, so next week's episode is episode 30, the Mega Digimon War Greymon. Wonder who's going to show up.
Definitely Metal Gurumon.
Oh yeah, for sure. Sora's gonna get a big dramatic moment where she seems like Garudamon's gonna evolve, and then Metal Gurumon's gonna show up instead. It looks like Taichi and Agumon are facing a swarm of enemies, which I'm like, okay, so it's still this episode. We haven't finished the episode yet, I guess. And I noted in my initial comment from watching the preview on Crunchyroll, like, where's Sora? Sora's not shown in this preview at all. But if you watch the extended preview on YouTube, Sora's there.
Oh, okay.
She exists. They didn't like forget about her or wipe her away or put
She
her
didn't
somewhere
just
else.
like say like, okay, I saved you. Bye. You can take care of yourself now.
So one segment I want to try, new segment for the show. So new characters that seem like are going to show up next week are Wargreymon, obviously, and Parrotmon. So will they speak?
You know, when Parrotmon showed up at the beginning of Kizuna, which I don't believe is a spoiler because it's like literally the very beginning. I that was one thing I realized was like Parrotmon doesn't actually show up very much in this franchise, does it? Like, you know,
No.
despite its importance to the franchise as being part of the very first movie. I'm currently putting my bets on it not speaking at all, especially because Parrotmon's not very high level, so it's like I'm kind of wondering how much of a threat it could actually be.
Yeah, when this episode ended with like, oh, more Digimon showing up and there's a shadow of Paramount, I was like, is that it? Like, okay, I guess. Like, it's weird because it's like, yeah, Paramount's definitely iconic, but not that threatening. So it seemed like a weird choice. But I also like if they're going like if this is Wargreymon's debut. Picking an iconic Digimon to go up against is an interesting idea. I'm kind of expecting them to like maybe there's even maybe I'm getting my hopes too high, but like maybe there's an entirely new form of Paramount that's going to debut as this new like threat that Wargreymond's going to need to fight off against.
So one
Like,
based off a parakeet, then.
yeah, Parakeetmon instead.
Parakeet on.
I mean, does Paramount have obvious evolutions that?
I don't think they've really done much with like anything to do with like Paramount and Paramount line or anything of the sort since like the early appearances. I remember, I think I looked it up on Wikimon, which chronicles even like the more obscure appearances for Paramount.
Hmm.
Back when I was like pointing out like, oh, it doesn't really get much like use after, and it's only been like a minor like appearance in Frontier and such.
Oh yeah,
And like other than that, not much.
yeah.
According to Wikimon, apparently Crossmon is what you would expect normally, but I would not be surprised if they just like whip something out totally different. Considering that like Devimon is supposed to be part of the Vandamon line usually, but then they brought up Dun Devimon here.
Yeah. Actually, now that you mentioned Dundevimon, then I'm like, okay, if they want to introduce, like, it would be a good, like, premiering Wargreymon would, I think, be a moment of enough hype to premiere a new
Yeah.
evolution, a new design. But, like, I don't know. I think it'd be really cool if you have an evolution of Paramon that still looks like Paramon. So you still have,
Yeah.
like, this, like, you take this old image in our minds of Greymon versus Paramon, but up it to Wargreymon versus Metal Paramon or whatever. And
Well, I would prefer something more organic because like War Greymon has like all these metal parts, so it would be kind of interesting to have like the organic versus the non-organic kind of
mhm.
contrast there.
Yeah, but some like more threatening version of Paramon would be
Yeah,
really cool.
but unfortunately, my bets are still on it not speaking.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's no way he's gonna talk. Like,
But War Greymon, maybe.
yeah, Wargreymon iffy because I think I'm gonna guess he's gonna talk. Like he's probably gonna say some inspirational line like "Thank you, Taichi. I feel your power."
Your courage gave me strength. They haven't really been bringing. They haven't defined the crests yet, have they?
No, I forgot until this episode how when they're talking, when they're using the walkie-talkies, that they show the crests as their symbols, their avatars. But
But they haven't actually defined it yet.
yeah, I for most of the characters that doesn't feel too weird, but like I feel like for Sora, I'd be like, why do I get the heart? Like, or Joe, like, why do I have a cross? Like, what's this about? Like,
Well, Joe probably thinks it as like prophetic as his future as a doctor or something.
oh yeah, but yeah, I think I don't know. I'm excited more for the insert song than for War Grandma, but
Oh goodness, you know I'm a musician, so of course I'm biased. But anything to do with war music is good with me.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the show. Last week's Digiprompt was what Digimon would be your worst nightmare to show up when you finally get a minute to relax in the digital world hot springs? And my favorite response came in from at Megadramon22 on Twitter, and they said, Rust Tyrannomon. He's a tetanus jab waiting to happen. The water would turn brown. He's so big, most of the water would be flushed out. Loose wires, it's a disaster waiting to happen. But I do love the Rust Dinosaur Mon, truly. Yes. Oh, that would be disastrous. So this week's Digiprompt is, in honor of Sora's dramatic entrance, what Digimon character would you want to dramatically appear to solve all of your problems, and how would they do it? So send your Digiprompt responses and general feedback to potages@gmail.com, potages on Twitter, and or in the episode comments on our website, potages.com. If this is your first episode, make sure you subscribe wherever you find podcasts and share the podcast with your friends who show up to save the day, even when the show refuses to animate them. And please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really is important for helping during the show and is the best way to support the show. I'm definitely Jeff on Twitter. And you can also check out my general anime podcast, Love It or Weeb It, which we are finally coming out with episodes covering the fall anime season, which is about to
Woo!
end because I have a big backlog and we're rushing through releasing 2 episodes a week. So
Hang in there.
yeah, we'll get there soon, get caught up. So Aster, where can people find you in the digital world?
Twitter is generally the best place. If you happen to like Vocaloid, there's an interesting announcement that's coming up very soon, but I can't talk too much about it. This is me revealing my music obsession again.
So yeah, Aster, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, this was really fun. And thank you everyone for listening. I'll be back with another guest next week to talk about episode 30, the Mega Digimon War Greymon. Bye!
Bye!
And remember, never stop digivolving.
Oh goodness, you know I'm a musician, so of course I'm biased. But anything to do with war music is good with me.
Yeah.
Although I'm surprised everything has been Tanimoto so far. Like every single, like all the inserts and the opening have been him.
Oh, really?
Like
I guess
so far.
I was distracted because like they're different performing artists, right?
No, I mean it's only one singer.
Oh, really? Oh, even the opening?
The opening and the now 3 insert songs are all by Tanimoto. So it's
Oh.
kind of interesting because I've never seen like one person do the whole thing.
I guess I was confused by the ending song.
Yeah, the endings are different. All the
Mm-hmm.
endings have been different. But Tanimoto has been on the franchise since Tamers, but it's just like I've kind of surprised that they've only had like one person doing all that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize he did One Vision Tamers.
Yeah, he's one of those, like, you know how like we have like franchise regulars who do like a lot of the music. So
Mm.
he's been on Tamers, Cross Wars, I believe, and like the anniversary stuff too.
Well, I'm intrigued. So he's definitely doing the new insert song?
Yes, that's been confirmed.
Oh, cool. I mean, I like both of the current ones, so
Yeah.
I'm excited for the new one. I mean, although I don't think they hit as hard as any of the older ones, but
Well, I
still
mean,
good.
context is also very important. Like, you know, Be the Winners is very supposed to be like a hype kind of song.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking with a friend about the Zero Two insert songs because it was the one it inherited Adventures Braveheart, but it also had its own 2 new ones. And I was talking about like how I don't really like comparing them because they're all very contextual. Because like Braveheart is supposed to be like the very stand strong kind of thing. Breakup was probably more of its like hype kind of like a starter evolution thing, and then like Beat Hit is like going straight for the jugular.
So in this season, I'm trying to remember how they've been used post like the premiere, but like it's generally been like one for the adult evolutions, one for the perfect
Right.
evolutions, right?
Be the Winners is the one for the adults, and that's kind of like the one where it's just kind of like, you know, get your like mood up or just like the hype. And then Extreme Fight is the one for the perfect evolutions, which is where like it's a little more like intense. So I think it fits the mood pretty well.
So did the insert songs in past seasons follow that kind of rigid, not rigid, but like did they follow a similar kind of structure of like how would they use them in 02?
Yeah, so in 02, Breakup is the armor evolution theme.
Mm.
So obviously that's like the starter evolution for that series. Braveheart was reintroduced as soon as they started having natural evolutions again.
That makes sense.
Reintroduced as same as Adventure. So it was kind of the midpoint mark at that point. So it was kind of like a little more like, okay, we're going back to the basics and like kind of the core, like we've achieved like the natural evolution. And then Beat Hit is the one that's used for Jogras strictly. And it was especially famous because at the beginning when you have like the dun 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 dun, when you have the Piledramon's evolution, he fires off the guns at that exact moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it got really famous for like synchronizing really well with that. And like Beat Here is also probably the most intense out of the 3 because it's about like intimate relationships and like all that. So like I think it's like the one that was basically going for like the most emotional hit and all that, especially because of like what Jokers actually is. So that's kind of my tract on 02 insert songs. But I think in general, like every insert song is kind of tailored to that kind of context, especially not just in terms of like what kind of evolution it was used for, because in Atmon Be My Light was just used for like whenever they feel awesome. But generally there's a huge sense of like the importance of context when it comes to that kind of insert song. So it's hard to really like compare for me.
Because you feel like the moment it's too defined by like how well it worked in the moment.
Right.
I feel weird because like a bunch of the like as someone who hasn't hasn't revisited the Japanese versions as much as the dub versions.
Hmm.
Most of the Japanese insert songs I only know as like songs I listen to completely out of context. So it's like it's
Yeah.
just a song to me, and I feel bad that I don't.
Yeah, I think like again, I think it does kind of depend on like series and entry on like how attuned they are. But another thing they also did with like in the Japanese version, especially, was that they not just like the Desperado Blaster, but like Braveheart, for instance, the fact that, famously, the fact that like the guitar riff happens exactly at the same time the white bar starts shooting out.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of that like footage timing to music going on. But I'm a music person, so I could go on this all day.
Yeah, those are cool moments. I wish it. Yeah, not to be a bummer about this new season, but like cool we got those moments.
Yeah.